It is early morning in the year 1327. You are not awake by choice. You are awake because the sound of a heavy bell rolls through the mist like thunder in slow motion. It comes from the church at the center of the village, the only place with a bell large enough to rattle the roofs. You rise from a bed of straw, not sheets. The straw is damp, it always is. The blanket you use was once wool, but now it is rough, matted, and filled with the scent of smoke and mildew. There is no glass in the window, just a piece of oiled cloth fluttering in the cold. Your breath fogs in the air. This is not the kind of morning you can ease into. There is no breakfast waiting, no warmth from a hearth already lit. You are the one who must light it, or go without heat at all. The floor beneath your feet is packed dirt, uneven from years of walking and spilling. A thin layer of ash from last night's fire lies scattered where the wind pushed it through the door. Your tools lean in a corner, a hoe, a wooden rake, a pair of worn boots made from stitched leather that was never yours to begin with. Outside, the village stirs slowly. The sound of coughing carries through the fog, a deep, tired sound, the kind that never leaves. Chickens scratch at the mud. A dog barks, not out of play, but hunger. You wrap a piece of old cloth around your shoulders and step into the cold. The sky is grey, heavy with the smell of wet earth and smoke. Every house is the same, small, thatched, and bent from time. The air tastes like soot and morning dew. Someone is already hauling water from the well. A girl no older than 12, her hands red from the cold. The bell tolls again, not to mark the hour. There are no clocks here, no hours to keep. It is the sound of order, the reminder that life belongs to rhythm, to God, to the fields, to the Lord whose name you may never say directly. You pass the church. Its wooden door is swollen from rain. Inside, you know, it smells of wax, dust, and centuries of prayer. The priest will speak later, perhaps about patience or about sin, or about how suffering is the path to grace. But for now, no one listens. There is work to do. There is always work to do. You walk to the fields as the first light of day creeps across the horizon, pale, thin, and cold. It is not beautiful, not really, but it is enough. By the time you reach the edge of the fields, the mist has begun to lift. The land stretches outward like a damp grey sea, broken only by the silhouettes of bent figures already at work. They move slowly, methodically, not because they are lazy, but because their bodies have learned that haste brings pain. The soil here is heavy. It clings to boots and tools like tar. Every thrust of the hoe takes strength, and every pull of the rake brings up stones from a field that has been worked for generations. No matter how many times it's turned, it never truly softens. The earth fights back. There are no tractors, no animals to pull plows unless you're lucky enough to serve a wealthier lord. Most of the work is done by hand. You bend your back, press your foot against the wooden handle, and push the blade into the soil. Again and again and again, the rhythm becomes a kind of prayer, one that no priest ever taught. Around you, the others say little. Talking wastes air. The only sounds are the scrape of iron, the groan of wood, and the quiet breath of people who have already accepted that this is their life. A man nearby sneezes into his sleeve. He will not stop working, he can't. The Lord Steward counts every sheaf, every measure of grain. If the work falls short, the rent still comes due, and there is no mercy for empty hands. By mid-morning, the mist is gone. The sun is weak, filtered through a sky of pale grey. It gives light, but not warmth. Your shoulders ache. Your palms burn from the friction of the wooden handle. But there is no thought of rest. There are no breaks, only tasks. The rhythm of the day continues until the bell calls again, hours later, when the priest marks midday with his chant. From the edge of the field, a small boy runs barefoot through the mud, carrying a loaf of coarse bread wrapped in cloth. It's your meal, your only one until nightfall. You break it with dirty hands. The crust is hard. The inside, dense and bitter from unmilled grain. You chew slowly, not out of choice, but to make it last. You eat standing, leaning on the hoe, staring at nothing. When you look up, the land seems endless, a horizon of labor stitched with sweat and prayer. No song, no laughter, just the steady heartbeat of work. You wipe your brow with the back of your hand, smearing dirt across your face. Then you lower your head, grip the handle, and continue. In the distance, the church bell rings again, not for rest, not for peace, but as a reminder. Even here in the farthest edge of the fields, God is watching, and he demands endurance. The sun reaches its highest point. Though you wouldn't know it by looking, the sky remains a pale sheet of cloud, diffusing the light until everything feels colorless. Time itself seems to slow, not out of peace, but exhaustion. You stop for a moment, leaning on your hoe. Your back feels stiff and your hands tremble faintly. When you exhale, the air tastes of iron and dust. You are surrounded by the quiet hum of insects, the dull rhythm of metal against earth, and the faint murmur of voices drifting across the field. There is no shade. The trees were cut years ago to build the Lord's Hall, and only stumps remain. You tie a cloth around your head to keep the sweat from stinging your eyes, though it helps little. The air smells of dirt, smoke, and bodies, the scent of labor that never fades. At the edge of the field, a group of women kneel beside baskets of grain. They sort, they tie, they move with practiced precision. Their sleeves are rolled, their faces streaked with soil. One hums softly, not a song of joy, but habit, a rhythm that keeps her hands steady. Her voice drifts through the still air, fragile but enduring. A man nearby mutters a prayer under his breath, not to ask for blessings, but to endure another hour. The church preaches that labor is holy, that toil cleanses the soul. But out here, holiness feels far away. The priest's words fade faster than the echoes of the bell. From the direction of the manor, riders pass along the dirt path. Men of the Lord wearing cloaks that never touch the soil. They do not look at you. You bow your head instinctively, not out of respect, but out of fear. To meet their gaze is to risk offense. To offend is to risk hunger. One of them laughs, a short, sharp sound that cuts through the quiet. For a moment everyone stops. Then the riders pass, and silence returns, as if nothing happened. You straighten your back, stare at the fields, and realize the day is only halfway through. The horizon wavers in the haze. Your shadow is faint, the ground warm beneath your feet. You take another breath, and the cycle begins again. The same motion, the same sound, the same surrender to necessity. In this place, survival is not about strength. It is about repetition, the endless endurance of the ordinary. To live is to obey the rhythm of the soil, to bend before it breaks you. And so you bend. By late afternoon, the world begins to dim, though the sun has not yet set. The light softens, turning the fields a dull gold, washing everything in the same color, the earth, the tools, the faces of those who still labor. It's the only hour of the day that feels almost peaceful, but even this peace carries a kind of weariness. The rhythm of the tools slows. Blades strike the soil with less force. The air grows cooler, and the sound of crows echoes faintly across the horizon. They circle high above the field, black flecks against the pale sky, waiting for whatever the day leaves behind. You rest for a moment, hands resting on the handle of your hoe. The sweat on your neck has dried into salt. Your arms ache, your breath comes heavy, but there is a strange calm that comes from exhaustion, a silence inside the body that no priest could teach. Someone nearby speaks for the first time in hours. He tells a joke, not a good one, but everyone laughs anyway. It's not the humor that matters, it's the momentary illusion of being more than tired flesh. For a brief heartbeat, the weight of the day feels lighter. The sky darkens further, clouds turning violet and grey. Children appear at the edges of the field, collecting fallen scraps of wood for the evening fires. They move quickly, small and quiet, their laughter mixing with the rustle of dry grass. Behind them, thin columns of smoke begin to rise from the village, signals of warmth, of hunger, of life resuming in smaller, quieter ways. You gather your tools and sling them over your shoulder. The ground beneath your boots is uneven, pitted with old roots and stones. The sound of the bell returns once more, softer now, like a sigh at the end of a long day. It does not command this time, it releases. The others begin to leave the fields, their silhouettes stretching long across the fading light. No one speaks much. The silence feels heavier than the labor itself. There is no pride in the day's work, only survival, and the quiet hope that tomorrow the weather will hold. As you walk back toward the village, the cold begins to creep in again. The smell of wood smoke grows stronger, From a distance, the roofs of the cottages glow faintly orange against the dimming sky. You can almost imagine warmth waiting behind every door. Though you know, as always, it will never be enough. You cross yourself once, not out of faith but habit. Then you keep walking toward the sound of evening. When you return home, the light outside has nearly faded. The sky has turned the color of old iron, and the air carries the sharp scent of smoke. The door creaks when you push it open, a thin wooden frame that keeps out neither the cold nor the wind. Inside, the darkness breathes like something alive. Your home is one room, perhaps two if you are fortunate. The ceiling is low. The walls are of wattle and daub, patched where rain has found its way in. The floor is the same as the earth outside, packed, uneven, smelling of damp straw and ash. A few tools hang from wooden pegs. A small stool sits beside the hearth, its legs worn uneven from years of use. The fire has been lit. It burns low, fed by scraps of wood and dry reeds. The smoke seeps through the thatch above, leaving streaks of black across the ceiling. In its glow, you see your family, their faces hollowed by the dim light, their eyes reflecting the orange of the flame. They do not speak at first. Words come slowly here after long days. A pot hangs over the fire, filled with what passes for stew, mostly water thickened by barley and a handful of vegetables, if any were left from the last market day. A bone or two from a meal weeks ago adds a ghost of flavor. When it's ready, it is shared evenly, no matter how small the portion. Even the youngest waits in silence until all are served. You sit cross-legged on the floor, bowl in hand. The first taste is bland, heavy, but it warms your stomach and stills your shaking hands. You eat slowly, not because you want to savor it, but because you must make it last. The fire crackles softly, casting long shadows that sway against the walls. Outside, the wind sighs through the gaps in the wood. Someone says grace, a short prayer that has been said 1,000 times before, half faith, half tradition. You mouth the words without thinking, eyes fixed on the fire. The warmth reaches your face, but not your bones. When the meal ends, the pot is scraped clean. There is nothing to waste. A child curls up beside the hearth, already drifting toward sleep. The rest of you sit in silence for a while, listening to the faint hum of night settling over the village, the occasional bark of a dog, the rattle of a shutter, the whisper of the wind against thatch. It is not comfort, but it is life. And in this world, that is enough. Night settles over the village like a heavy blanket. The last light fades from the cracks in the door, replaced by the steady flicker of the hearth. The air inside grows thick with the scent of smoke and damp wool. The outside world, the wind, the fields, the distant church bell, begins to fade into memory. Only the soft crackling of the fire remains, a fragile sound that keeps the dark at bay. You sit beside the hearth, legs folded beneath you. Your eyes are half closed, not in sleep, but in the slow surrender that comes before it. The warmth of the flames lulls your body into stillness. Every breath feels heavier than the last. Around you, your family has already fallen into silence. The child by the fire sleeps soundly, curled beneath a thin blanket. Beside them, someone mends a torn piece of cloth by candlelight. Slow, patient movements that speak of a lifetime of repetition. The candle burns low, wax pooling around its base. There is no rush, there never is. Outside, the wind grows stronger. It moves through the cracks in the walls, whispering like a voice you almost recognize. The thatch above creaks softly. Now and then, the distant howl of a dog or the cry of an owl cuts through the quiet, sounds that no one truly hears anymore. They have become part of the night's rhythm, as natural as breathing. You lie down on the straw bed. The smell of earth rises to meet you. Every movement makes the dry stalks rustle and shift beneath your weight. There is no pillow, only a folded cloak beneath your head. You pull a rough wool blanket over yourself and stare at the ceiling, watching the faint orange light of the fire flicker across the beams. This is the hour when thoughts begin to drift. Not dreams, not yet, but the slow unraveling of the day. You think of the work done, the blisters forming, the debts owed. You think of next year's harvest, of the priest's sermon, of the Lord's steward counting grain. Then you think of nothing at all. The fire pops softly, sending a spark upward into the dark. The last thing you feel before sleep is the cold at your feet, the kind that never fully leaves. It is the reminder that comfort, like mercy, is a luxury not meant for your kind. But still, you close your eyes, and for a few hours, the world is quiet. It is said that in the Middle Ages, people did not sleep through the night. They slept in two parts, the first sleep and the second sleep. Between them, there was a waking hour, a time when the mind hovered between dream and duty, and it is in that hour that the village truly breathes. You awaken in darkness. The fire has burned low, leaving only a faint red glow. For a moment you are unsure why your eyes have opened. The world is still, yet not silent. The wind scratches faintly against the door. Something shifts in the thatch above. The small scurry of a rat or something heavier. You hold your breath and listen. In this hour the body rests, but the mind wanders. Some pray, some whisper to the darkness, speaking names of the dead or the saints, unsure which might answer first. Superstition lives easily here. It seeps through the cracks in the walls, just as the cold does. There are stories told in the fields about lights that wander between cottages, pale flames that float low, like candles carried by unseen hands. The priest says they are souls in purgatory. The old women say they are hungers that never died. And when they appear near the crossroads, no one leaves their home until dawn. You rise quietly, moving toward the hearth. The coals glow faintly, enough to cast red light over the room. Everyone else is asleep, faces turned toward the warmth. You stir the ashes with a stick, feeding the embers a few slivers of wood. The tiny flame flickers back to life, fragile and trembling like a heartbeat. Outside, the world feels vast and listening. The air has grown colder. Through the slit of the window you can see nothing but the faint outline of the church on the hill, a black shape against the stars. Its bell does not ring at this hour. Even God, it seems, sleeps between the first and second dreams. You sit again beside the fire, arms wrapped around your knees. Somewhere in the dark a dog barks once, then twice, and falls silent. The echo fades into the trees. You whisper a short prayer, not out of fear but habit, one passed down through generations who understood that the dark was not empty. The flame steadies. You watch it until your eyes grow heavy once more. The second sleep begins, and with it, the slow collapse of thought. The night holds you gently but never kindly. The night does not end suddenly. It thins slowly like smoke fading into air. The first sign of dawn is not light but sound, the low creak of wood as the wind shifts, the faint stir of someone rising beside the hearth. The fire has nearly died. Only grey ash remains glowing faintly in its center. You push it gently with a stick, coaxing a final spark to life. The air is cold enough to bite. When you breathe, it forms clouds that drift and vanish in the dim light. You can smell the morning long before you see it. Damp earth, smoke, the faint sweetness of hay. Beyond the walls, a rooster calls, followed by another and then another, until the village awakens like a slow tide of sound. You sit up, rubbing the stiffness from your neck. Your joints ache, your body heavy from sleep that never healed. There is no time to linger. The day begins as the last one ended. With labor, you wrap your cloak tightly around your shoulders and stand. The straw bed whispers beneath your feet. The others begin to move as well. A mother stirs the pot with yesterday's water. A child pulls on boots too large for their feet. Someone coughs, a dry, constant sound that belongs to every house in the village. There is no speech, only motion. The rhythm of the morning is older than memory. You open the door and the grey light spills in. It is not warm, not golden. It carries no promise, only necessity. The sky hangs low and heavy like wet wool. Mist crawls over the fields once again, and for a moment it feels as though the world has not changed at all, as though the night was only a pause and the day before never truly ended. From somewhere behind you the church bell tolls. Its sound rolls across the cold air, deep and slow, marking not time but obligation. You shoulder your tools and begin the walk toward the fields, boots sinking into the soft earth. The mud clings, the wind bites, and yet you keep moving. You always do. The world is quiet except for the distant call of crows and the steady rhythm of feet against soil. Ahead the horizon glows pale with the first light of day. It is not beautiful, but it is enough. The fields wait, the same as yesterday, the same as tomorrow. And in the corner of your heart, the quiet corner where memory lives, you understand the truth of this life. That endurance, not joy, is what keeps the world turning. Once every 7 days, the rhythm of the village changes. The bells ring not for work but for trade. It is the market day, the only time when people leave their fields behind and gather together. The air smells different today, not of soil and smoke, but of bread, tallow, wool, and the faint spice of ale. You walk the muddy road toward the square. It isn't a grand market, only a patch of flattened earth surrounded by wooden stalls. The merchants arrive from nearby villages, their carts creaking under the weight of barley, salt, and worn cloth. Their voices rise above the chatter, calling out prices, haggling in tones that sound almost cheerful, though nothing here is truly free of strain. You trade what little you have: eggs, a small sack of grain, a broken tool repaired with wire. In return, you might bring home a pinch of salt, a strip of dried meat, or if luck is kind, a few drops of oil for your lamp. Coins are rare. Most hands trade goods, not currency. Value in this world is measured by hunger, not wealth. The crowd thickens as the morning wears on. Children chase one another between the stalls, laughter echoing against the timber walls of the tavern. An old woman sells herbs from a woven basket, dried mint, sage, and yarrow bundled with string. A priest stands near the fountain, reminding all that charity is a virtue, though his robe is lined with better fabric than any here can afford. At the center of the market stands the tax collector. He wears the Lord's colors, deep red with a crest stitched in gold. He watches every exchange, his hands clasped behind his back. When he speaks, people listen. When he writes, people pay. A single gesture from him can undo a season's worth of toil. You avoid his eyes. Everyone does. You pause beside a stall selling candles. Their smell is sweet, made from tallow and beeswax, a scent of something almost holy. You can't afford one, but you hold it for a moment, feeling the smooth wax beneath your fingers. The merchant smiles without warmth, then looks away. The bell rings again, not from the church but from the tavern. It signals noon. People begin to drift away, pulling their carts, clutching their trades, already thinking of the walk home. The square empties slowly, leaving only the sound of footsteps and the cry of a distant crow. You look back once before leaving. The stalls, the voices, the brief illusion of life beyond labor. They all fade into the same grey mist that waits beyond the fields. The market is over, and tomorrow the bell will call for work again. There is no day when illness is absent. It lingers like the smoke from the hearth, invisible but always there. In the Middle Ages, sickness is not a visitor. It is a neighbor. It sleeps beside you, eats with you, and follows you to the fields. The cough begins quietly, the kind that hides between words. Then it grows deeper, rawer, until every breath feels like a blade. There are no doctors here, only remedies passed down through memory. Garlic boiled in milk, nettles crushed into paste, a prayer whispered into cold hands. Some heal. Most do not. In the village, sickness moves from house to house without warning. It comes with the change of seasons, with spoiled grain, with rats that crawl through the walls at night. Sometimes it takes the young first. Sometimes it takes the strong. The priest calls it God's will, and perhaps that makes it easier to believe there is a reason, even when there is none. You remember when fever took the blacksmith's wife. She burned for 3 days while the church bell rang for prayer. On the 4th, her house was sealed, and no one entered until the priest declared the danger gone. The villagers whispered that her spirit wandered near the well at night, not out of malice but confusion, unable to find her way to rest. Those who survive grow accustomed to the sound of coughing. It becomes part of the background, like the creak of the wind or the toll of the bell. You learn not to ask who is sick, because you already know. Everyone is in one way or another. When you fall ill yourself, you do not stop working. You cannot. A day lost is a day unpaid. You move slower, your hands shaking, but the fields do not wait for weakness. You cough into your sleeve and keep digging, pretending it's only the cold. The earth takes no pity. It never has. At night, the pain deepens. The hearth burns low, the shadows grow long, and the fever begins its whisper. You see shapes in the dark that are not there. Faces, perhaps, or memories that never belong to you. Someone offers you water. It tastes of clay. You drink anyway. When sleep finally comes, it is not gentle. It is a plunge into silence, deep, heavy, and uncertain. And in the quiet corner of your mind, you understand what the priest means when he says that suffering is the only constant. Because in this world, pain is not the end. It is the proof that you are still alive. The bell rings differently when someone dies. Not fast, not frantic, but slow, deliberate, and heavy. Each toll carries across the fields, through the cottages, and into the hearts of those who have heard it too many times before. No one asks who it is for. They will know soon enough. Death in the village is not sudden. It creeps in like the cold, patient, and without voice. It takes its place beside the fire, waits in the corner, and when the time is right, it simply reaches out its hand. No struggle, no drama, only stillness. Most die in their homes, surrounded by the same walls that saw their birth. The priest arrives with his book and his incense. He speaks softly, his Latin words more for heaven than for the living. The family kneels, heads bowed, eyes hollow. A candle burns beside the bed, not for light, but to keep away the dark things that linger when a soul departs. Its wax runs slow like time itself. When the breath stops, there are no screams, only a long silence, broken by the sound of cloth being drawn over the face. The body is washed with cold water, wrapped in linen, and placed upon a simple board. Sometimes the neighbors come to help, sometimes no one does. Death is not rare enough to gather crowds. The burial happens quickly. The earth cannot wait, and neither can the living. The grave is dug at the edge of the churchyard, marked by a wooden cross or by nothing at all. The ground is uneven, some graves older than memory, others fresh enough for the soil to still breathe steam. The priest speaks again, the same words he has said 100 times before. There are no tears left for him to notice. When it is done, the villagers return to their homes, the field calls, the sun rises, and life resumes its rhythm as if the world has not changed. In truth, it hasn't. The absence of one soul is barely a pause in the turning of the seasons. That night the bell rings once more, a final toll, low and distant. You lie awake, listening as it fades into silence. For a moment you wonder if you will remember their face. You won't. No one will. But in the corner of the room, the candle still burns, and for as long as it does, the world remains just a little less dark. The morning after death feels almost the same as any other. The air is cold, the ground wet, and the bell still rings at dawn. For a moment, the village seems quieter, not in mourning but in habit. Grief here is not spoken. It lives in silence, folded beneath the weight of work. The family of the dead returns to the fields. Their hands still ache, their faces hollow, but the soil must be turned. There is no space in this life for idleness, not even for sorrow. When hunger presses at the door, tears must wait. The living have no luxury of pause. In the cottages nearby, life moves on. Children laugh again by the well. The baker lights his oven. The priest begins another sermon. The same words, the same gestures, his voice steady, as though nothing has changed, and perhaps nothing truly has. The rhythm continues, unbroken, indifferent. In the evenings, the absence becomes a shadow. It lingers near the hearth in the way one chair remains empty, in the silence that falls where laughter once lived. The family does not speak of it. They tend the fire, mend the tools, and prepare for the next day as they always have. The world gives no reward for remembering and no mercy for forgetting. A few villagers visit, bringing small gifts, a loaf of bread, a few words of comfort. Their faces show understanding, not sympathy. They too have lost before. They too will lose again. It is not tragedy. It is pattern, the same pattern that governs the sun, the seasons, the harvest, and the heart. At night, the sound of the bell returns faintly in dreams. You see the face of the departed, not clear but blurred like smoke caught in candlelight. For a moment, the world feels fragile, suspended between memory and endurance. Then morning comes again, grey and cold, and the feeling slips away. By the week's end, the earth above the grave has already hardened. Moss begins to creep along the wooden cross. No one visits. The living must keep moving, and the dead have no need of company. In the end, time is the only gravekeeper. It covers everything, names, faces, even grief itself, and though the world forgets, the bell never changes its tone. Each toll sounds the same, no matter whose name it carries. Time moves not by clocks but by weather. The seasons turn like the slow grinding of a wheel, steady, unyielding, and indifferent to the lives it carries. One morning, the air feels different. The fields that once steamed with life now lie quiet, their color fading to the dull brown of sleep. Autumn begins. The wind sharpens, leaves fall like ash, and the smell of rot mingles with the smoke of every hearth. For the villagers, this is both relief and warning. The harvest is done. The grain has been counted, the stores sealed, and the hope, or fear, of survival through the winter begins its quiet hold. The fields are bare now, but they are never empty. Crows gather where men once worked, their black shapes pecking at the soil. The ploughs are cleaned and stacked, the sickles hung upon nails. You sweep the dirt floor of the cottage and patch the roof with fresh straw, praying it will hold against the storms. You do not speak of the cold that is coming. You simply prepare. By the time the first frost arrives, the village is wrapped in silence. The ground hardens, the well freezes, and the days grow shorter, the sun weaker. Fires burn almost constantly, small, hungry things that eat through every scrap of wood you can spare. At night the smoke gathers thick beneath the roof, stinging the eyes and lungs, but it is better than the cold. The children stay close to the hearth, carving toys from scraps of wood. Their laughter is soft, muffled by the thickness of the air. Outside, snow begins to fall, slow and soundless. It settles over the roofs and fields, erasing every footprint, every furrow, as if the land itself has forgotten that it ever worked. Winter is not cruel out of malice. It simply is. It tests what the harvest has left and what the spirit can endure. Some do not see spring again. Those who do speak little of it. They simply rise when the bell calls, as they did before, and begin again when the thaw returns. For the peasant, the passing of seasons is not a story. It is survival written in weather, in the shifting taste of the wind, in the scent of smoke, in the sound of the bell that never fails to ring. And when the fields bloom once more, no one celebrates. They only work because joy, like warmth, is fleeting, and in this world, both must be earned anew each year. Winter does not begin on a single day. It settles in gradually, like breath freezing against glass, until one morning you wake and realize that the world has turned to stone, the earth is hard, the air is brittle, and every sound carries farther than it should. In the village, the stores begin to thin. Barrels that once felt heavy now echo when struck. The grain is rationed carefully, a handful at dawn, another at dusk. Bread becomes thin and grey, baked with ground bark to make it last. Meat is a memory. Even the rats grow scarce. The cold finds its way into everything. It creeps through cracks in the wall into the straw bedding, beneath the layers of wool that never seem enough. At night, frost gathers on the inside of the window cloth, and your breath hangs above you like a ghost refusing to leave. You sleep close to the fire, but it burns low, fed by scraps of furniture and bits of fence wood taken piece by piece. Some days the bell doesn't ring. The priest's hands are too cold to pull the rope. Instead, the silence fills the air like another kind of prayer. You measure the day by light, a pale, thin thing that visits briefly, then disappears behind the grey. People move slower now. The fields are empty, the paths buried beneath snow. Those who must travel do so with bowed heads and rapt faces, leaving no footprints behind them. You see shapes moving through the mist, villagers or perhaps something else, the lines between both blurred by hunger and exhaustion. Inside, the family eats together, though there is little to share. You break the bread carefully, each piece a quiet decision. The children do not ask for more. They have learned too soon that asking changes nothing. Afterward, everyone sits in silence, listening to the crackle of wood and the sigh of wind through the thatch. Sometimes you hear stories from the older ones, of winters worse than this, of years when snow buried the roofs and the rivers froze so deep that even the oxen starved. They tell these stories not to frighten, but to remind that survival is not guaranteed, that living through the cold is a kind of grace. And yet, in the faint glow of the dying fire, you feel something stubborn still alive inside you, a warmth that no hunger can extinguish. You cannot name it. It is not hope. It is simply the will to see another dawn. It happens quietly. No bells ring to mark it. No one dares to call it spring. But one morning the cold feels different. Less like an enemy, more like a memory. The frost that clung to the window cloth begins to melt, dripping in slow trails that glisten in the weak light. Outside, the world still looks dead, but something beneath it has begun to move. The first sound of thaw is not birdsong. It is water. The slow, steady trickle of ice melting from the eaves, falling onto the mud below. It is a sound that feels like breath returning to the land. The snow shrinks back into the ground, revealing dark, wet soil that smells of rot and life in the same breath. The villagers notice before they speak of it. Their steps feel lighter, their voices less hushed. The fires burn a little smaller now, not from scarcity, but because the air no longer bites as fiercely. Children venture outside, their laughter thin but real, echoing between the cottages like something half forgotten. The fields once buried are revealed again, ruined, heavy and waiting. Men walk the borders, testing the earth with their boots. It is not ready yet, but soon it will be. The rhythm of work begins to stir beneath the surface of things. The hoes and rakes are taken down from the wall, their handles cleaned of dust and soot. They will sing again soon, the same old songs of survival. For now the village breathes. The air smells of thawing soil and wet wood. You can hear birds again. Not many, just a few brave ones testing the silence. Their wings flash in the grey sky like tiny promises. At the well, the ice has cracked. Water moves again, slow and uncertain, like a limb waking from sleep. Inside, the fire burns quietly. You sit beside it, feeling the warmth spread into your hands. It no longer feels like a battle, only a comfort. The worst has passed. You know it not because of joy, but because you are still here. You have endured. There will be hunger still. The fields will demand their due. But for this moment, brief and fragile, there is peace. You close your eyes, and the sound of dripping water becomes the closest thing to music the world has left. The seasons turn again. The frost becomes rain, the mud becomes dust, and the fields bloom once more with green. The same hands that once bled from cold now dig, sow, and harvest again. The same backs bend, the same bells toll, the same prayers rise into the same indifferent sky. Nothing changes, not really, and yet everything begins anew. This is the nature of life here, not progress, not purpose, only rhythm. Each day follows the one before it like a shadow that never grows tired. The people of the village do not seek greatness. They seek endurance, the simple, stubborn act of existing in a world that gives nothing freely. When you stand at the edge of the field at dusk, the light catches the air in a way that feels eternal. You see the smoke rising from the cottages, the faint glow of fires beneath the roofs, and the silhouettes of those returning home. It could be any century. It could be anyone's life. You realize in that quiet moment that history does not live in books or battles. It lives in these small, invisible lives. The old woman who whispers prayers before the hearth, the child chasing a chicken through the mud, the man who mends a broken cart in silence. None will be remembered, yet all of them have shaped the world in ways no chronicler can record. Their lives are threads, woven into a fabric that will never bear their names. At night you sit once more beside the fire. The flame flickers just as it did 100 nights before, and will again tomorrow. You hear the distant bell, marking the hour you no longer need to know. The sound rolls through the darkness, slow and patient, echoing through generations. It is not a warning, it is not even a call, it is a reminder that this, the labor, the hunger, the quiet, is not punishment nor curse. It is simply what it means to live, to be human in a world ruled by earth and time. The candle burns lower. The fire sighs and falls to ember. You lie back, eyes half closed, the warmth brushing your face. Tomorrow will come. The bell will ring. The fields will wait. And though the years will pass and the names will fade, the rhythm will remain. Because history is not a story that ends. It is a circle, unbroken, eternal, and quietly alive, in every corner of the room.